don't really think Bitcoin will drop below the $1 trillion mark in the future, not for sustained periods of time. It may dip very, very quickly, but I think that we're now, going to move up, and that's significant for Bitcoin because, all macro asset buckets that people store value in, whether it's real estate, equities, bonds, whatever, it's all, units of trillions of dollars. So Bitcoin's kind of like this little baby that's just broken into that club. And yeah, I think, and also given the adoption of it, which is going exponential, time's running out for it to drop below this zone as more and more people enter.
So what else are you seeing on chain? I mean, I'm reading a lot about how the Bitcoins are not really moving hands, right? So people are holding.
Yeah, there's a lot of more and more of the supply that has been moved to what we call illiquid holders. That are these people that have a history of accumulating coins with very little selling. So that trend's continued. Notably, a lot of coins are moved off the exchanges. So people are buying the coins, scooping them up, and like the inventory on exchanges where they're usually traded or sold is depleting. So that's another good sign. We've had that. It's unprecedented, really. It's been running like that for the good, it fluctuates, but for the most part, it's been depleting for a year, and that's a new pattern. So if you were to look at Bitcoin over the last 12 years, it started off with more and more coins flowing into the exchanges from those early guys that, mined it from as early as 2009, 2010 onwards, and they were selling in. And so the supply started to fill the exchanges, and it was traded. And, around the COVID crash, like a year and a half ago, I guess, there was a sea change of activity, and that behavior started reversing. And so a lot of the coins started moving away from the exchanges and being locked up into cold storage under, people that are hodling. So that's been going for a very, very long time. And if you look at the long arc of 12 and a half years, this last year's had this complete behavioral change. So, that's a very bullish sign. It's not all, well, we've also seen that there's, what Glassnode, the on-chain data provider, Glassnode, they have a metric called long-term holders, which is essentially coins that are being locked up in wallets for 5 months or more, right? And if they're been in a wallet and they've aged for 5 months, there's very little chance that they'll be sold. The probability starts to drop off a cliff that they'll sell. And so if you would look at that cohort, that's been ramping up and up and up, and now we're at peak levels. And so those guys are now starting to sell into this kind of rally we've had from 30,000 to the mid 60,000s. So, there are people selling into it and people taking profit. But that's actually what you want to see, because in every really strong rally, you see these guys start to sell into it. That have been around for 5 months. They probably bought in the first quarter of this year and made substantial profit. And, it's a real good indicator because you can kind of measure how much of those coins are out there. And as they start to deplete down those 5 months coins, as they sell, obviously now they'll start from zero, day one, day two. So that side of things, as it starts to bottom out, then we're reaching the top of a bull market. And the good news is that they've only just started selling, so it usually takes many, many, many months for that trend to sort of reach its end. So that's telling us that we've got probably 3, 6, who knows, even 9 months of a rally ahead, but yet to see how that progresses because it changes every week. Everything's relatively bullish on the longer, sort of the weeks to months out from here. Anything can happen within a day or hour, but months out, it's pretty bullish.
Well, that's really interesting to hear. So why do you think it hasn't broken that 70 mark? Because obviously the all-time highs are exciting, but I mean, they're not too far from, the 60s we had earlier this year before the big correction. So why can't we break 70?
I think, well, the market's been a little bit overheated. We had the ETF that was announced, so there was a lot of speculative buying that came in, and a lot of the people that have bought are more speculative in nature. And so, if we were to look at where we sit in terms of what I call supply shock, which is the ratio of those guys that are really strong holders to the rest, you know, I would say the ratio of coins held by these really strong holders versus more speculative hands, we're not at the ratios that we saw in the first and second quarter before May. We're actually climbing up there, but not at the same levels where we last touched the $64,000 range. So structurally, you could say we're not as bullish on chain, at least, but we've also had a lot of changes with the ETFs being approved. So those ETFs are futures based. They're not actually buying Bitcoin. They're actually buying futures contracts to get exposure to the price. And so, in a way, that's like a new kind of thing that we have to account for. And like, for all things being equal, the price should be much higher. Like for the given amount of on-chain hodling, because now we've got these hodlers that are hodling actually derivative contracts rather than Bitcoin themselves. So I think you take the two in concert. The hodling on-chain is not as strong as, say, April. But then we've got this new kind of kid in town, which is hodling the derivative contracts. But overall, it's been there's a lot of speculative FOMO, and the fundamentals are catching up, but we're just going sideways a lot just to really wait for that to normalize. I think like when I look at it, I've been saying to a lot of my subscribers to my newsletter, it's just like it's sideways, it's consolidating, it's a little bit overheated, we've got a few weeks to wait, and that's actually what's happened. It's just a wait and see game. Like the fundamentals are really strong over the next 3 to 6 months. Locally, it's been overheated, and we just have to wait. It takes some time, There's been, and the other thing is everyone is very, very bullish right now. And whenever everyone's bullish, it's very difficult for the price to run upwards because you get a whole lot of speculative long positions in the markets, and that makes it very, very profitable to take the other side and short it and prevent the price rise and effectively, take out the long positions. So the majority is very seldom right. So we need to get into a position where the market's a little bit more confused about the price going up, and that actually opens the window for the price to go up. Markets are funny like that because it's game theoretic between, buyers and sellers, and it's kind of a sports game, right?